Okay, so this is the first session of the collaborative review from Manila and for the Victoria release. So basically, the idea is here is to go through the some of the changes that we have been proposing and do some a collaborative review, trying to explain the most important points and and answering any questions that may start to rise in between the reviews. So if you guys have any question, just you can interrupt anytime. And this specific meeting, we are going to go through the feature called share server migration that we are proposing, and is this one that has more Manila core code changes. So this is important for having more reviewers taking a look, since this is a feature, a new feature, and we are trying to merge this in this release. I believe that everybody here already know. Uh, Everybody uh, has already been in another meeting, so I don't think that we need introductions. What do you guys think? Okay. Okay, the idea is I will start presenting this feature. We have an etherpad that has the links for code changes and a place that we can take notes, write questions, and also the answers and place the to-dos. So this link was already provided in the mailing list, and also it's in the IRC chat. So I believe that everybody already opened this Etherpad and placed their names. I will start sharing my screen. Okay, you guys can see.
Yes.
Great. So regarding share server migration, this is a feature that we proposed it on a specification in this release, and was accepted and merged this release, and we start implementing this main feature, and also we are providing the implementation drivers like a dummy container and the NetApp driver. So I believe that we can go through at the first moment, we can go through quickly through the spec itself, and do a couple of explanations here, what we intend to provide with this feature and how we are going to provide this feature. So what we have is that at this moment, Manila have only a share migration feature, which means that a cloud administrator can only migrate a single share to a different destination, a different host. So by proposing this feature, this new feature, the idea is to bring the benefit to cloud administrators to move an entire share server and all its shares and snapshots to a different destination. So we have been planning these for a lot of use case that they are in the spec, and basically the idea here is to use the same idea that was implemented in share migration, and bring this concept to share server migration. And by doing this, we use the same approach that is split in two phases. We were discussing this in the last PTG. So there are two approaches. One is to do a migration in a single phase, since some drivers might support doing this at once, but for at least from our side, our driver, it only supports it has better benefits by using two-phase approach than the single one, because this first phase, that is the data copy, and can take too long, and users still can use these shares and write data into them, and while the first phase is happening, users won't have their access disruptive. So the idea is to implement a two-phase approach. And in this two-phase approach, we were following the same methods that were implemented to share migration. So we have at least all of them, and we added a new check also. So for those that already know how the share migration works, this is a very similar API, but now the actions they are triggered in a share server and not in a share. So in the spec we were describing, status change, task states changed in the same way that share does. And we are also providing these new APIs for the admin to trigger this operation. So I want to go through the APIs here first, and then we can see later in the code. But the idea is to just talk about little about these APIs here, and later we can see how it's working, and you can see in the code. Okay. First one is the migration start. So the idea here is to start the first phase of the migration, and the cloud admin can trigger this operation in a shared server and provide some capabilities like in share migration. So for now, beside providing a host to place the new share server, admin is also able to choose a different share network. So when moving to a new destination, he might want to change this network, since he might be moving to a different availability zone, or to a different networking. And this is a possibility, since we expect to create a new share server in the destination, and we can create this new share server using this new share network. So this is a possibility. And capabilities that this migration can support remaining writable if the admin provide this as true. He's saying that he wants to maintain the source writable while the first phase of the migration is happening. So this is something that the driver must support, and something that the admin can choose to be mandatory or not. Same for non-disruptive. If the driver can migrate to this shared server to a new destination and maintain the network and so on, and not changing export location and so on, he might want to set non-disruptive to true and see uh, and expect that the driver support it. At this moment, we don't have any driver implementing a non-disruptive true, because on all drivers we are changing the networks and also changing the export location from these shares. So this is here, since in the near future we may have a driver that support this kind of capability. Preserve snapshots. If all snapshots from all shares can be preserved during this migration, so admin might want to set this to true, if he wants to preserve all the snapshots. If the driver does not support this, he would deny the operation, and the admin will need to delete all snapshots from all shares before actually trying to migrate again the share server. So basically, this is the idea behind the share migration, but now we are applying also to share servers. We have also the migration complete, the operation that after finishing the copy in the first phase, the admin will be able to trigger the migration complete in order to actually move everything that's pointing to the source, point to the destination, and have all the export locations updated and so on. And after this moment, after successfully complete operation, the share server will end up migrated at the new destination. We also have the migration cancel. It's possible during the first phase to trigger a cancel operation in this migration. So everything that was being created in the destination will be aborted, and the share server will be back active again, and all its resources also back to available again. So this is another API that can help an admin to cancel this operation if sometimes it's taking too long. Get progress. The idea behind get progress is to see the total progress of the first phase. The idea behind that is that the admin can see if this migration is actually it's happening, is not stuck or something like that, or how many time you will take to finish. So this is if the driver provide this interface, the admin can uh, have a better idea what's happening in the backends. And also, we are adding reset task state. So this is a new API since shared servers uh, doesn't have a task state field. So we are adding a new task state field to share servers, and this is an operation to reset this field the same way that we have for shares. So we can change this test state field in the same way that we already have a reset state for the share server status. And finally, this is a new API. If we see at share migration, we don't have this API in share migration. The idea behind migration check is that the admin can validate if the destination is compatible with the migration that he is requesting. So by using migration check and providing a host and all other parameters, we can see if the destination that was chosen by the admin can hold all the capabilities that the admin is requesting. So the idea is to have a response in this format. So what we are going to see is the capabilities that were requested by the admin and the supported capabilities that this host is is answering. So uh, we can see that we have two new fields here. So we also, since this is not mandatory for the drivers to implement migration cancel and get progress, the admin will be able to see if this backend will support cancel operation. So we can see if he can cancel after triggering the migration start, and also if this backend will support a get progress API. So this is a new API that we are also providing. And now we have some details on implementation that we can discuss in the code. Any questions so far? So the idea is to go through the code. I don't know if you guys have a better idea of doing this. We should go to every file. We should select some files and go through details, or a quick overview on each files. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, it would probably make sense if we started from the API down. Let's say what happens when migration start happens, and I mean, you could even lead this with. I don't know if you plan to give us a demo.
Yes, we can
Where you
do a
can.
demo. I have demo driver ready. It's faster,
Okay.
but I also have NetApp driver doing migration also.
Okay. So if you want to lead with that, that's probably cool too. I mean, it will
Yeah.
probably give folks a chance to understand the user interactions first, and then the internals.
Okay, so we can show. I think that's a good idea if we show this working, just the basic commands, how they work, and then we go to the details. I think that's a good idea, and not setting only the demo to the end. We can do a bit of both. So let's see. Uh, I will go through the API, so I can show how it's working, the basics, and then we can go to the code, and if we can go back and see different operations. But I can show things that we are changing here in Manila client, and then we go through the code. And I believe that probably make more sense when we show the code that we are things that we are doing. So, are you guys seeing the screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So I have a dev stack here with the dummy driver. We can show working on NetApp driver later because it takes long to finish the migration. But the idea here is just to show, for example, if we go to details on a shared server that I already have here. First thing, we have two new fields. The first one is a task state. So this will be filled by the migration operation. So at this moment, it does make only sense when we are dealing with migration. So this will show us which state of the migration this shared server is. At this moment, when we are migrating a share server, so different from share that we have an entity share in each instance there. So these instances are related to each other by a parent. So they have a parent that this is this share. So it's easy to link these two instances to the same share. In share server, we still don't have these abstractions, so we just have the share server itself. And in order to have this link between those two share servers, we created a new field that's called the search share server ID. That when we create a new destination share server for migration purpose, we set this field to point to the source. So in this way, we are linking these two share servers in a way that we can see who is the source, who is the destination of a share server migration. So these two new fields were added, and everything is still here. Um, Something that we also added are two new states. So we have server migrating and server migrating 2. So the first one is for the source. So we can identify that sources might be migrated, and the other one is to identify that it's a destination for a migration. It's something similar what we have also in share migration. So what I have here is some shares that are at my backend dummy 2. These 3 shares, and these shares are in these share server. So if I show you, is you see that we have this share server that is holding these three new shares. I also have some snapshots here, and what we can start to take a look is we can go quickly through the commands. So migration check is one of the commands that we are adding. So the idea is to have to check if we can migrate a specific share server to a destination. So we will get the share server and try to see if it can be migrated to dummy 1, since we saw that he is on dummy 2. And then we can set the capabilities. So preserve snapshots, I will set to true. I want to be writable, and let's see if this guy can support a non-disruptive. Preserve snapshots.
0.
Yeah. So the answer is that it's not compatible. And here are the requested capabilities that we set here in the command, and the supported capabilities that the dummy 1 answered to us. So what he is saying that he does not support to be non-disruptive, like we are requesting, and he answering us that support this share network, because since we did not providing the request capabilities, he's just answering back the same share network that the source share server is. And the migration console get progress, it's also supported by both. So if we trigger the same command again, setting to false, so we get a compatible through, and we can try to do something like migrate to the same backend, same share network, and get on a conflict. So this is our one of the checks that we can go through the code and see some validations that we are doing and not providing and not letting the migration happen. So we will not let migrate a share server that's empty or that has a different state that active or something like that. These are the details that we are validating in the API.
So you were showing us that we can check it manually in advance. Are we also checking it when we issue the command to actually do the migration?
Yes, the idea is actually you are triggering the command and we are triggering in the driver a check operation. Driver is answering us that yes, I can do this migration before actually triggering the migration start.
That's what I thought I remembered. I just wanted to make sure.
So by changing the command, the same command to migration start instead of migration check, we will actually trigger the operation in the backend. So I believe that everything is correct here. Let's set migration server list. We can see that we already have some state changes. So this guy here is now in server migrate status, and we already have a new share server that was created or can be reused, but in this case was created with the status set to migration 2. If we show the details about this one, we will see that we have a migration driver in progress task state. So we are in the middle of the first phase, and this data is being copied by the driver. And we can also set get progress to see how the progress of this first phase is going. So we are at the middle of the process, and this gives us the current task state from this migration. Let's see our shares. All shares already also have their status changed to server migrating, so I cannot trigger any operation this share since he's not available. Or one thing that I can do is to reset their state, but this is a admin operation. And snapshot list also have a different status at this point. So the idea is to block any operation to happen when we are doing this migration. And at the end of this first phase, we have a task state change. Our driver goes to migration driver, phase 1 done. And this is when we can trigger the complete. Share server migration complete. Let's see our share server list. So we do still have two share servers. Both are active again, but at least one is expected, the source is expected to be empty at this moment, but was not deleted yet. So we have on Manila a periodic task that will at some from time to time you check the empty share servers and delete them. So this share server can be used by another share to serve as a share server. But if we take a look now at our shares, we will see that they are at the dummy one host instead of the dummy 2. And let's see Manila show in one of these, and we have a new share server ID and a new host. The export location were also updated. I didn't record the last one, but they were also updated, and snapshot list should be active again. So all available. And these are the basics on migrating a share server. We can show that later the console operation and so on, but I think that we are good to go through the states and then through the code. So I was creating here the task states and how they change, because through the CLI and through the API, it's hard to see all the task states changing. So we have a lot of them to identify where the migration is, at which state he is and what he's doing. So this is not different from shared server migration. what actually I wanted to show before we going through the code is that we have the share server status and the task state. So in this first square, I have the share server status and later the task state. So what was happening when we trigger the migration start? First thing is to change all status and task state from the share server. So he start to be on migrating, and will continue in this state until a migration success or any error that happens in the middle of the process. And what changes between different part of the codes are the task state. So when we write after starting the migration, we will have a migration start task state. And this is set already in the share API. And after that, the Manila will trigger an RPC to the share manager, where the status will change again to migration progress. At this moment, we already have some operations starting to happen. So we already have some initial steps of checking, and now we are already in progress. So we are already actually starting the migration. Between these two steps, where here the only difference that we have two share servers. So what we are going to do here is to check compatibility with the destination, and if everything is compatible and the result is success, and we are starting to create or to provide a new share server for destination. So from this moment, we will have two share servers that will be migration progress. The difference between the source and the destination will be one set to migrating and the other one set to migration 2. From this moment, we have two shared servers, and the difference between driver starting and migration progress is just some actions related to changing access rules if needed. If the driver not supported being writable, we would change all access rules to read only. So, and not every driver will do this step, and we change the migration driver starting. We do this before entering into migration starts, since a driver can take long to start, can take some time to start this migration. So we have this task set to understand that we already called the driver and we are waiting for his answer. And after he returned, after the driver answered with success, we entered in a phase that is the driver in progress. So at this moment, we are expecting the driver to started already the migration and is copying data from source to destination, but we are he already returned to the Manila with success, and this data will continue to be copied. At any time, if we face an error here, so what's going to happen is that we are move the share server to active and update the migration task state to migration error. So if the driver fails to start the migration, it's expected that he didn't change anything in the source. So because we are moving to active and the source should be okay. And we are expecting that the source is also untouched or empty, because these destination share server can be reused or called to be deleted later. So these are some assumptions that we are having here. And later on, we have a periodic task checking migrations that are in progress. The idea behind this periodic task is that he will keep asking the driver to see if the migration has finished, at least the first phase has finished, and if the migration has already finished the data copy, he will answer with success, and we are moving the task state to phase 1 done. At this moment, also errors will be treating as the source to be continue to be okay, to be active. We would going just to update the migration to a different state setting to migration error, since it failed at some point during the first phase. So this approach was based on the share migration. The same assumptions that are being made on share migration are doing here. We are doing here. And finally, the second phase, where we trigger the migration complete. We call the driver to complete the migration, and if everything went okay, the share server is updated to migration success, and the share will be active. Share server will be active again. Different from the other task states, when a migration complete raises an error, we are not sure anymore if the sources remains writable, if the shares are still in the source, or if they are in destination. So this is on a state that we cannot guarantee if the source or the destination are healthy. And for these reasons, we are setting both share servers to error. And at this moment, the admin will need to take place and fix all the errors by itself. So he will need to reset states and guarantee that the shares are still okay in the backend. And we cannot guarantee anything from this point. So everything will went to error. Nothing will be deleted. So admins will need to hold these scenarios. And this side I have the instance. So there isn't too much difference. The only thing is that we are not changing task states for shares. So we are migrating share servers. So we are moving states between share servers. So the share servers that are being managed, and we are just updating the instance status at this moment, because we are trying to block any operation that the operator wants to do in these shares, or show to users that this share is being migrated and he cannot trigger any other operation in this share. So it's more informative, and the idea is to block any other operation. And the same as the share server migration, when we get an error in the complete operation, we are not updating to available, but if an error happens, we are updating everything to error instead of available. So there isn't too much news on this part. We are bringing this flow from the share migration and applying in the share server migration. We added a new task state for cancel, and I believe that we might, depending on the scenario, we might have a new task state to block other operations. But the idea to have all these task states is to block different operations depending in the state that the migration is. So all these task states, at least, we also have in the share migration.
So when you cancel it, it's going to go back to active migration canceled, is it? Or is it active and none?
When canceling, will be back to active, and migration task state will be migration canceled.
Cancel, okay.
Yeah.
And everything else should be available and none, all of the stuff that's inside.
Yes, and everything will be available again. And also the destination server will be active also. So
and we block the cancel operation when the task state is in migration in progress, or migration driver starting, or driver in progress. I think I mean, what stage can you do cancel?
at this moment, we can cancel everything that is before phase one.
Okay.
So everything that's here, we can cancel.
Hmm.
So at this moment, we might be missing a new task state here right after triggering the complete. So we might need to add a new task state here only to block cancel while the complete is happening. So there is no block operation of this type in share migration. We also don't have something like that on migration server 2, because this can take long to complete. And we should avoid avoid a cancel in this process. I have something similar to this on continue. So I face an issue when I trigger a migration cancel, and while the driver was processing the cancel, the continue was also happening and at the same time. So in cancel, we added a task state before calling the driver for cancel. So we have a cancel in progress that will block the continue thread to change or to move share server states. So this is something that we might also need here, and it's
And for share migration, right? I don't remember that being a thing even for share migration.
Migration. We don't have also some task states like that.
Okay.
But we might not be facing these issues because share migration should be faster.
That is true.
But
At the same time, it could be a race that, I mean, it's one of those things where the user interaction and the manager interaction are racing, and there's no way to stop it unless we go into micro states.
Yeah, the issue is there, but we didn't saw happening yet. But
yeah,
for sure it's there. Okay, we can go through the code at this moment, and then I think that we can have a 5-minute break to grab some coffee and go back to the code again. So, okay, we can start with the API, but I think that before starting to the API, we can take a look on the model update and the API from database changes. So this is the core patch, the first one here. So this is the where all the logic is implemented, drivers interface, and the new API. So this is a patch that has a few lines, and I don't think that we need to go through the tests. Unit tests, I believe that this. I don't think that we need to do this during these meetings. So we can start only on the code changes. And something that I want to point is that I'm with the ownership of the patch, but Andre, Carlos, and Felipe also were working on this patch. So everybody has helped to bring this feature. So APIs and driver stuff, everybody was helping at some point of the code. Okay, let's start with first thing, we do have two new states. There are share server states, but they are being also used for snapshots and share instance um, uh, to indicate that we are doing a migration, but it's not a share migration, it's a server migration. So this is a different status. And we have these two new status for them. We are reusing the task states. I don't believe that, I don't know what you guys think, but I don't think that was needed to duplicate these task states. What was I was doing was to create a list of the task states that are being used for server migration. So we have a list of the task states that are being used. And one of the new ones is the cancel in progress. And we can go, we can see how we are using these later in the manager. And that's what we have from new states.
What did you say you were not duplicating, Douglas?
Task states. We are using the same task states that were defined for share migration. These ones. So we are reusing the same task states. They don't have any
Yeah, share or server specific stuff.
yeah, there
But
is no resource name here and so on. What I did was to at least create a list of the status that are being used by server migration, so we can see that there is a difference from task states that are being used for share migration. So this is something that you folks can think about it and see if there is any issue of doing that.
so the
But
reason we added that list is, I think, just for validating what you can reset the task state to, right? Isn't that what you're using this for as well? Like an administrator can come in and say reset task state, and they should be providing a valid string. And so that's that list of valid strings.
yeah,
Besides
that's
that,
right.
it shouldn't serve any other purpose.
Yes. No, basic that, and from my point of view, this is also help developers to see which task state are being used by a resource. So in the point from the uh, not from only from users, but from the developer point of view,
Right.
they can see which task states are being used. So there's no need
Makes
to
sense.
check uh, about data copying completed when doing share server migration. You don't
Great.
need to worry about it. So
That's a good idea. Thanks.
from models, so we have two new fields for share servers, and we also have here some part of the codes that we are adding new states for shares, for example. So we have some code changes related to status itself. So what I think that the most important part is the task state and the searcher server ID. These two fields were added to share servers, and we are using both to handle the share server migration. Still from API, database API. We have some new APIs for the database. Some of them we are using in the manager, and the others are related to some updates that we missed in the during the process of the development. So if you think that we are moving a lot of states of a lot of resource for a shared server, so if a shared server has 200 shares and we want to update all the status for these shares, we were calling 200 times the share instance update. So the idea here was to provide an instance status update where we can provide a list of share instance IDs and have all the status update at a single operation. So this is the idea on this new instance status update. We also are doing some changes on the get share instance by share server. And we also have a snapshot instance status update. Same idea from share instance. We can update a list of snapshot instance ID values. So we are using this on Share Manager. And the last one, something that we didn't found and was missing, it's a function to update the export locations for a snapshot instance. So this is probably was not implemented because there is no place in the code that needs to update an export location from a snapshot instance. So he added this code that's very similar to the share instance export location update. So this function will update all the export locations for a snapshot instance ID. So the idea is to receive a list of export locations, and if set to delete, we delete the ones that are not part of the export location list, the new list, and we can also add new export locations that are in the list and that are not present in the database. So this is the idea behind this function. Different from share instance export location update, we don't have the metadata that export location from shares that they have. So this is a more simple version of the share instance export location update. And finally, we have a new function to get all share servers passing filters. So at this point, we are filtering share servers based on the search share server ID. We use this a lot to find the destination share server given a search share server. So we do this, and probably this can be also removed since this function covers what get all by host do. Something that we can do if you guys think that's better, and replace all the part of the code that do get all by host by get all by with filters. Something that we didn't work on these, but probably we can do until next week. These are the database API updates. Okay, we also have a migration, database migration file. So we are editing task state and search server ID. So we have the upgrade and the downgrade scenario. We also added the unit test for this part, and we tested on our environment. It's a simple migration since we are just adding 2 new fields. And that's what we have for database. What do you guys think?
That's pretty cool. The only thing I would remind or recall is we have an issue with every migration. We have to bump the test timeout for the tree walk that we're doing. The migration, I think it's called test walk versions, and it's a pretty rudimentary thing that we do out there, which is because we're going through every single migration over and over and over again. So it's an n square problem. So I mean, we just keep bumping the timeouts every time we add a new migration. But currently it's set to some 10 minutes or so. So if you're starting to see issues with that, it's probably because you need to bump it up to 15 uh, because you added a new migration and it just added work.
I think that we didn't solve any issue with that, right, Carlos? But we found some issues on the migration test at some point, but
Okay.
wasn't related with timeouts, I believe.
Yeah, I think we haven't found any issues about that. Not yet in our tests that we have performed. We are still testing, but we have tested a lot and that didn't happen yet.
Okay.
So
It's typically not something I would see locally. I mean, I would see it locally only when, we've not bumped up the timeout for a long time. It happens a lot with these infrastructure nodes and especially rack space, uh, because I mean, some of their hypervisors are old, and so the nodes are actually really slow, and it in theory takes longer than 10 minutes to run the same test that could probably run in 6 minutes elsewhere. So that's been the kind of problems. But not a problem.
Thank,
We don't need to do that in this patch. You can definitely take a look at it in another patch.
Great, thanks. Okay, so we are in the middle of the our meeting. You guys want to take a 5-minute break, or we
I
can,
would like
Yeah.
5 minutes. Yeah,
drink a coffee?
yeah, sounds
Awesome.
nice.
Can you pause the recording here with this?
Yes. Let me see.
Great.
Okay, so I was adding the link to the state diagram, so you guys can take a look later. And yeah, I said that is in progress because I'm still working on that, but I believe that we have some information that is helpful on code review here.
Absolutely.
And I'm planning to do add the migration console and so on here also. It's easy to review and easy to find any issue in the workflow. And thanks for taking notes here, everybody. Okay, so we now can start with the API, and I will start with the API for share server. So from the point of view of the API for share server, we are adding those actions to the to share servers. We are including both news status, and also we now have a task state for the share server that is that list that we are seeing in the beginning of the code review. And we also now have a new view that we can take a look later that related to this view is related to the migration check output, for example, and so on. And now starting from the API, we have migration start. We have bumped the micro version to 56, and we are setting the experimental flag to true. I believe that share migration is still experimental, right? Also.
Yes, it's supposed to be graduated in the next release.
Yeah. And we are setting the experimental here. And this is the first, if got merged, that will be the first release to get to have this feature. Share migration uh, was implemented in Newton and was have been improved and was being improved during more releases. and we are relying now in this API that was set to share migration, and we believe that we have a more stable or more familiar interface for admins by providing these similar APIs. And what we implemented here was the migration start in the same way that share does. And we are validating the things that we raise in the spec, and just a quick overview. We are returning not found for share server IDs that does not exist, and from the other parameters like writable, non-disruptive, preserve, snapshot, and host. When they are not provided, we are answering a bad request, or when they are not being provided or are being provided with wrong values. From the point of view of share network, it's not a mandatory parameter, but can be provided, but the share network must exist. And for share network that does not exist, we are also answering a bad request. And the last thing that we do here is just to call the share API to start the migration. And at this shared API is where we actually start doing the validations before triggering the operation at the share manager and the drivers. So for errors like invalid share server or services down, we are raising a conflict here. So invalid share server can be a share that is an invalid state, or a share that has a share server that has a share with invalid state, and so on. At this moment, we are also denying share server migration for shares that has replicas or share groups. So everything should raise at the share API an invalid share server, and this will be translated to a conflict to users. Moving on, I'm going to move to the migration check. That is a similar interface. This is the last one. So here, migration check. Same thing, checking for the share server, mandatory parameters like writable, non-disruptive, preserve snapshots and host, and checking if the new share network exists. And at the end, we also call the share API. So it's the same thing. The only thing that's different is that we have a result here, and this result will be will build that view that I was showing in the initial demo. So we can go to the migration view on the next file. Complete, same thing, not found for share server. We trigger migration complete, since this is the only parameter that the user need to provide is the share server ID. And for invalid share server, here we are raising a bad request. So when the user call a migration complete to a share server that's not being migrated, or that's still copying data, we are raising a bad request. So he requests an operation in a share server that is an invalid status. And for others, things that can happen, like a service is down, we are raising a conflict. So we have a conflict of states here. So we are following the things that we define in the spec, but if during the review you guys think that we can change these results, like we answer to the API actions, we can change this at any time. Migration cancel, same thing as complete. We are going to call the share API for migration cancel, and we are raising bad request and conflict for the the errors that we expected to have. Get progress, same thing, the other ones. The only difference is that we have at the end a view that will be available in the when we got a result from the share API. So this view will build the task state and the progress itself from this share server migration. And finally, we have the reset task state. This is operation where the admin can reset the task state of a share server, since for some reason can be stuck during the process in a specific task state, and we need to unblock to do other operations. So that's what we have from share server API. And let me see. We have some changes in the view. So as expected, we have for this micro version, we have two new fields, task state and search share server ID. This are task state, this both fields, only admin will be able to see, since this is a resource that only admins have access to. And this new share server migration view, this one where we build the get progress view, that we provide total progress in the task state, and it's the place that we build the check migration view by providing the request capabilities and the supported capabilities that are supported by the backend, and provided the result of if the destination is compatible or not. Okay. From APIs, these are small changes, just bumping the max API version and providing a version history. And from the point of view of this part, is just we are just updating the new status that can be set in a share, since now he also can be server migrating. Any thoughts on API, guys?
That's pretty good. But the only this thing though is when the service is down, are we responding with 409 in case of shared migration as well?
I don't remember. We need to take a look.
Check.
We can check that. Yeah. We can do a similar result for sure. And we have the policies file updated. It's very simple. All operations are admin only. They are often our post, our actions that we do to a specific share server ID. So this was also updated. See, so I think that we are ready to go to share API. I believe that we can start looking. We skip these changes for a while, and we can start right in the APIs that we already were talking about. So we have check, start, complete, cancel, and get progress, and then we can go back in those methods that are above. Okay, so share server migration start. We have some initial checks here. So we do some validations for this share server in order to identify if it's feasible to migrate this share server. And this initial check is the same check that we made in the migration check. So we have both here. So before calling the share manager to actually do a server migration start or a share server migration check, we do these initial checks that they are is the function above. And if everything went okay here, and these initial checks will raise exceptions in case of any conflict or invalid status. We here we shall already start updating some research status. So we start updating the share server status to server migrating and task state to migration start, and the same we are doing to shares. So at this moment we are already updating some states before calling the share manager, so we can avoid uh, some operations being called while we are migrating stuff. So this is the part that we start updating things, and from share server migration check, we don't do nothing regarding updating states, since we are only checking if they are compatible or not, and we expect a result.
Just, uh, sorry, a small interruption there. So
Okay.
in the share migration start, where are we checking for individual shares and snapshots? Is that in the initial checks?
Yeah, we can go to initial checks now, since these are the only two methods that are really doing these initial checks. So if we go here, this is the migration initial checks. So we can go through of them and see if they make sense. So the first thing is to get all shares that belong to the share server. And we are denying migrating share that are empty. Something that can happen is starting migrating and this share was scheduled to be deleted, something like that. And we also don't see any scenario that wants to migrate a share server that's empty. I believe that if we do this, yeah, what can happen is that the share server will be deleted in destination since he's empty. So we're
It's possible, but it's also not, it is not necessary, right?
yeah
Technically, you can keep share servers around even when they're not, um,
yeah
they don't have shares.
yeah
But yeah, I don't see a reason why you would want to preserve the same share server with shares.
exactly. The second check is regarding the status of the share server. So we are only migrating share server that are active, and other status are being denied. This is a check that we added recently. This one is checking also we are blocking moving a share server to the same backend, same share network, since we are not changing anything. This is something that I believe that exists on share migration. When we want to migrate a share to the same host and same backend and pool, and you do not change the share type or the share network. So we are not changing anything, and this operation is blocked because we probably uh, provided a wrong, an invalid parameter or something like that. So we are blocking same backends and same share networks. Something that was decided. Another thing that we are blocking here, it's not expected, but if happens, can bring some issues to the share server migration. So if we search into the database and find any other share server that has a status set to migration to and points to this source share server. This means that we already have a destination share server that probably is stuck in a status, and it is need to be cleaned up before starting a new share server migration. This might be a result of an error, and if we consider to have two share servers with the status migrating to point to the same share server, we can have some issues on the logic that we have in share manager. So we are blocking this, and this might be a status that can happen only if the admin reset share server states and so on. So something that can happen, but is not expected. So we are checking if this share server doesn't have any destination share server, and if it does, we're blocking and providing an error message to the admin. And now here we are looking through all the shares. So we take a look on our share status, see if it's available, if share has replicas, if it has a share group configured, and so on. Same thing for access rule status. We do not expecting anything related to error. So we are using an error for that. And we also are checking if the share is busy. It's this is a check that we already have in the share API. And we are also doing here a same validation, but we are raising an invalid share server if this share is really busy. Another thing is to validate the destination host. So we are getting the service host from the destination host provided by the user and check if the service is up and running before proceeding with the migration. And another one is something that we are checking. It's about availability zones and share network subnets. So if we are migrating a share server to a destination host, and the destination host AZ doesn't has any share network subnet attached to that share network provided, we are denying. So we are avoiding to get this error in the future. So probably when trying to create a destination share server might fail because the availability zones are not, the availability does not have a subnet associated to that share network. So this one that I was talking about is actually this one below regarding share network subnets and availability zone. And this one is related to share type extra spec that is called availability zone. So the destination host, if one of the share types extra spec availability zone has an availability zone set, so the destination host must be in this list. So we need to check every share type to see if matches with the destination host regarding the availability zones. And that's what we have so far from initial checks.
A couple of points there. One is your share check is happening at too early, I think. So you have a bunch of checks at the bottom where you can you can move these up top. Like for example, you're validating the service host, you're validating the destination host as well, whether it is well formed, as well as you're validating the types, etc. So all of those checks don't depend on shares and snapshots. So you can basically move those bunch of things up top to reduce a window of race, basically. Because what you might have is you might transition the you might accept the migration call, but then there is something that a user does that an administrator can't see, that is that's gone in, for example, to create a snapshot or to replicate a share or something like that, right? You might end up in a transitional share at that point between the time that you've checked and you've started your migration. So I'm only suggesting that you move these checks up top because they don't depend on shares. And a further suggestion would be to do a test and set. And I don't suppose it's going to be overly complicated, but I know that you're reusing this check in both the migration check compatibility as well as in the migration start. So in check compatibility, you don't need to do the test and set, but in migration start, because you're going to modify the share statuses anyway, could you do a test and set right then and there? Like if all the statuses are you know available, you go ahead and set them to migrating, so as to again reduce another race window.
Yeah.
Of course, we can clarify that,
Yeah.
despite all of this, races can still happen, especially on a long-running migration operation like this, in your documentation and stuff. But I bet this is going to become an issue, especially because you have this pyramid of resources and you're modifying the one on top. And I
Makes
still don't
sense.
see anything on snapshots.
Yeah. Um, we still don't see. Let me see here. Do we have a check here, Carlos? Do you remember from snapshots? Or this is something that we are doing at any other point?
I would say it's being done at any other point. I don't recall checking share snapshots at this point.
Why it's not here also now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if there is preserved snapshots as a thing, then you will want to validate that snapshots are there. Otherwise, you don't care, right? I mean, what happens when somebody doesn't care about snapshots and the driver doesn't support it? Are we going to delete those snapshots from Manila?
Yeah, we have this kind of validations, but I believe that we are replacing the difference in a different place
Share
of the
manager
code.
plans,
Yeah. So let me see if I check. Let's see, migration check. And let's see, migration start is here. So this is part of the share manager. Let's see if we do any validation on that. So we have a start driver here. So just a second, we have the share server start here. And we have snapshot instance here, for instance. And probably.
So all that state transition currently are happening inside your share manager code.
Yeah, it's so it's a little bit different. We are doing a check on share manager. We have other checks related to the what the driver supports. If it supports the preserved snapshots, then we are going through and taking a look on this its status. But thinking now, we can do this for sure on the API. I think it's better place.
Yeah.
And also to
Okay,
avoid the race condition problems, we can do what we were saying before. We can check and update the status right away to avoid
Right.
these
So if you
issues.
do that in a single DB session, so I mean, SQL Alchemy transactions are sessions. So you can basically start a session, check your resources, and modify them at the same time. And if any of the turn back to the thing saying, to API saying, you can't proceed. That would be, I think that's, I mean, an example of that is happening in the access rules.
Got for me, your audio is failing sometime.
Yeah, I was able to listen, just choose some part of what he said, and now, for instance, I'm not able to hear anything.
Let me.
Ooh. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, now we can. We
Yeah.
lost like a lot of what you just said.
We just
Oh,
lost
shit.
your
I
audio.
think my
You're
yeah, my
talking. We were
microphone died on me.
talking. You were talking about the problem with the access rules update, and that might be something related to status changes.
Yes, just give me 1 second. I'll just grab a connector and be back.
Sure.
I'm taking notice here, Douglas, about the to-do, so I'm filling up the etherpad with the things that are
Yeah.
appearing to do. So don't worry about that.
So, okay. This is the check.
Hello, I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Great. Sorry about that. So so I got cut off completely, I think. So I was suggesting that I mean, what you can do with your DB check is tie all of the share related checks into a DB session. That way you don't, you check within the DB session, you go ahead and transition states if all of the statuses are available. If any of them is not available, you can go ahead and roll back the session and respond to the API with an error. I suppose that is very similar to what we're doing in the access rules code, but I'm not sure it's the same because we might be relying on higher level locks in the access rule code, because over there we have the concept, we have the issue with multiple share instances and the batching of access rules and stuff like that for a given share instance. So there was a lot going on to meddle with DB sessions, but for you, in this case, because you're only operating on one resource, share instances, you should be able to handle that in a session.
Yeah, I think it's pretty feasible to do that in a single session, and it would
Yeah.
be helpful to roll back, as you said. So I just taking a note here to do this.
Thank you.
Right. So I move back to API. If you guys think that's is still missing some checks here in the initial checks, we're planning to move snapshots and share access to here. They are placed at this moment at the manager, but we agree that we probably should be doing this right away, checking and update states. And after doing that, we are calling the the RPC to start the share migrations start. And this will happen with all operations. So same thing for complete. The only thing that we are doing is checking the state, and if the first phase was completed before actually triggering the RPC. From cancel, we are also checking status of the share server and calling the driver, calling the share manager to cancel the operation if these phases match. So here we are checking which task state the share server is. So we are allowing at this moment only driver in progress and phase 1 done. And we are raising errors for different states. From get progress, same validations, task state validations. We always get the destination share server, and then we trigger the RPC to the share manager to retrieve the progress. If the task state is different in a different task state that is migration driving progress. So if the task state of this share server is different from this one, we are relying on a function that share API already has, is the migration get progress state. So this was already implemented for share server, share migration. And this one, so he gets the status based on different status, different task states that the share or share server are reporting. So we have some status that will report progress 0 and other ones that will report 100%. So we are calling the driver only at the moment that we saw that a migration driver is in progress. So this is something that we saw in share migration, and we are doing for share server migration also. As we can see here, we are only setting these operations for server migrating. So this means that only search share server will support these operation. If we trigger to in the destination, we will get an error. So this for all the operations. And something that we might be skipping here, we are reusing some functions to provide us errors based on task states. And we are reusing this function by providing now the resource type. So this will work for share and share server. And so these are some small fixes. Share server get destination is a function that we are providing to check in the database the destination share server for a source. So we are raising errors when no destination were found. So this is being used in a lot of part of the codes. And we also we are raising errors when we found more than one destination share server. Something that's not expected, but we are checking here and aborting any operation that has more than one destination. Something that okay, so I believe that's time just to talk about the scheduler. So as we saw in migration start, we are calling the share manager to start the migration. We are not going to the scheduler to check if the destination is feasible for the share server. So we have been studying the code of the scheduler and trying some modifications. and we saw that the scheduler was not ready for holding share server migration or share server validation, since he was built only for shares and to place shares in pools. And what we want to do is to place share servers in backends. So we saw that a lot of code was needed for that. So we abort this flow. So we are not going anymore to the scheduler, and instead of that, we are asking the driver to check for us if the destination is feasible. So during the migration check, that's a driver interface that we are going to see in a few minutes. We are providing a request spec object that has all shares and snapshots information that the backend might need to check if the migration of the share server is feasible. So the idea is to, instead of sending a request spec to the scheduler, is sending a same request spec to the driver, and the driver try to validate if it's feasible to migrate or not. By doing this, we needed to implement a new function to create a request spec with all information from all shares and snapshots. So we created a share server migration request spec. What we are doing here is, besides getting all the sizes of shares and snapshots and providing this request spec, we are also reusing a function that we already have for share to create a request spec for a share, and we are doing for all shares and building this list and providing as a server request spec. So what we have here is a list of all shares request spec plus their sizes. So this is something that in the manager we are going to provide to the driver, and drivers can use this to validate at least if the share server can't fit in the destination. They can use the total size to identify if their backends or pools they can handle this share server. And in the other side, they can use the shared request spec to see if all capabilities from all share types and in all shares, they are supported in the destination also. So we have been validating this kind of capabilities and size in the NetApp driver. So we are actually using this request spec to try to at least validate if the destination share server destination host can hold this migration. And this function here is what we are using in the share manager to build the server request spec. So in the share manager, we are going to see this call from the API. And I believe that it is all of we have from this point of view. And now, before starting looking at share manager, I believe this is the most important one in that has more code.
Douglas, just a sec. So this call get share server migration request spec ticked is coming in from the share manager, you said?
Yes.
And
yes,
what?
I'm calling in the share manager because actually this information is needed for the driver. So we are building this in the manager, not in the API. And this is here because we usually build this kind of request spec in the API since we send this to the scheduler. So
Agreed. But
this code,
even when it happens in the share manager, this isn't really coming to the API service, right? It's just using this method in the share manager service. It's not like a API request.
No.
Okay.
I was saying calling the API, but actually it's just I'm just using this method in the share manager. Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So that's all what we have from the API, and now something that is very, very important. And I need your feedbacks about that. When we go to the RPC API, we are bumping this version since we are adding these new RPCs. And something that we decided during the implementation, and you guys will ask why, is we are sending the requests to the destination, not to the source. And if we go through share migration, we will see that all operations are triggered in the source, and we will saw a few RPCs to the destination to create resources and so on. And when we reach the manager, we will see that we have a lot of we have more interaction with the driver itself. So by implementing these functions in the source, we saw that we were triggering too much to a lot of RPCs to the destination, and wasn't interesting at all. So what I'm trying to say is that we are actually triggering the share server migration at the destination host for all operations, including the continue periodic thread. So doing this, it's easier to call the driver and getting an answer. It's easy to set up new share servers and check compatibilities and choose reuse if the driver wants to reuse share servers and so on. We are asking the driver during the migration check to the driver validate if it has the space needed. So the driver itself need to be called destination, since the destination knows their pools and so on. So everything seems more easy and to call the drivers and to build the workflow itself in the destination. So
It makes sense. I think I don't recall a similar discussion during share migration and why we would call the source driver, but I think we had a very similar thing with share replication. It was quite similar that in the aspect that you're describing, that all of the new resources had to be created in the destination, and it was I mean it was just going back and forth through the RPC layer if we had to do it from the source, from to drive it from the source. And more importantly, because in case of replication, the source might be the one at risk, so it's easier to, for example, do promotions and stuff. You can't go through the source. The source is broken. It could be broken.
yeah.
But I'm actually confused why we didn't think of this for share migration, and I hope you've written these notes in the driver file. I think
Yes.
you
Okay.
have. Okay.
Yeah. I believe that we added this to the driving interface, saying that we are going to call this in the destination.
Okay.
If we miss any of the interfaces, we can do the updates. But yes, the only thing that we might need RPCs in this with this approach, calling at the destination, is to update access rules. So we are managing sending RPCs when we need to move all the access rules to read only. So drivers that does not support writable through, we need to move all the access rules to read only, and this needs to be done in the source. So this is the only thing that we are using RPCs at this moment, if I remember correctly. And all the other stuffs, we don't need RPCs, and we can create our servers and call the driver to check and so on. It's easier, and at least from my point of view, when we are dealing with application and migration, when we have source and destination, at this moment in the driver, there is no distinction. The driver needs to understand both source and destination configuration. He needs to trigger operations on both. So from the point of view of the driver, it's important to say that he need to understand that he's been calling the destination or the source, but in the end, the operations need to be triggered on both source and destination. And I believe that by calling the destination, at least the problem that we face, the first problem that we faced, that was get the pulse information. This can only be done in the destination, or easily, and more easily, we can retrieve this info from the destination. So moving to the manager itself, we'll do the same thing. I will start with the operations that we already have been looking, that start, check, and so on. We have 2 minutes. I don't know what you guys think, if we should stay a little longer or if we should schedule another time. How you guys feel about that?
I'm okay with continuing.
What do you think, Gata?
Yeah, I think I'm okay as well. So we can continue, but I think you've covered the bulk of the stuff, and we're only left with the share manager, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I believe that the most important one, and I believe that is the last one. The other changes are minor changes, something that I don't believe that we need to explain on details.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's continue, but can we take a couple of minutes and come back to this?
Yeah, 5 minutes, okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, though. So I'll stop sharing.
Yep.
Okay, so we are back at the manager, share manager code. And the idea is to start reviewing the functions related to the operation, so migration start and so on. And then we can go the other functions that help us with the procedure, with the workflow. So what we have on these on the share manager side is that we are this is being called at the destination. So we are expecting to call drivers and so on at the destination for this functionality. And what we have an interface that I believe that we can open here, the driver interface at the other side, so we can follow what we are requesting and providing to the drivers. So let's take a quick overview on the driver interface. So we can see if something is not aligning what we are expecting as a driver interface. So from migration start, continue, progress, cancel, check compatibility, and complete, we have similar interface. So what we are providing is basically we are providing a search share server model, destination share server model, a list of shares and a list of snapshots, because these are the resources that are usually affected by this migration. So we are providing both. It's not expected that a driver will use that on migration start, but we are providing from our point of view, we are creating a new share server and moving all the data from one share server to another. So we are relying on a technology that can copy everything that is inside the share server to the destination. But at the end, we are providing both, since makes sense to have this info in the driver side. Same thing from migration continues, search share server, destination share server, shares and snapshots. As we were saying before, well, there's some notes here telling that we are calling destination share server backend, and we can provide a better documentation if you guys think that it's needed. To get progress, different from the other interface, we are not providing the shares and snapshots, but we are just asking the progress. If the driver has this information, he can check about which progress, which information about progress it has. And cancel same interface, source, destination, shares, and snapshots. Check compatibility is a little bit different. We are providing the search share server, the destination host, and at this moment we are going to see in the measure that we still don't have the destination share server. It's a little bit different from the share manager, share migration, and we are providing the old and the new share networks. And now here also we are providing the request spec that we were talking before. So we are providing here information regarding all shares and their sizes to the check compatibility, so drivers can have a chance of validating capabilities and free space before actually doing the migration process. From this check compatibility, this expected return is this one. If the destination is compatible, writable, if supports being writable, this one needs to be deleted. And if can do a migration non-disruptive, preserve snapshots, and if the driver supports migration, cancel and get progress. So this is the return expected by the driver. And finally, the migration complete that has a return code, a return model, more complex. And we are providing both source and destination share servers, the shares, the snapshots, and we are here also providing network information.
I had a quick question. So the shares and the snapshots that you're providing through all of these interfaces are going to be the destination shares and the destination snapshots, correct?
So not actually. When we start implementing these, something that we identify is that we are not thinking of creating new instance of everything that we have in the source. So what we are expecting from the drivers that they do migrate everything from source to destination, but we are not expecting to create new shares and new snapshots in the destination, which means that in our implementation, we are reusing the same instance from a source to a destination. So what we are doing is updating information of the shares and the snapshots after completing the migration itself. So we are not duplicating everything. We are just reusing. This is something that it's also important to clarify. By not, I believe that on share migration, when we have two instance source and destination, they are needed since there it can be mounted and copy the data. And at this moment, when we were implementing shared server migration, we were thinking we have a source shared server and a destination shared server, and the driver should copy everything from source and destination, and he should not need to copy every content of every share to a destination share. So Something that we did was we not duplicated this instance.
Yeah, I'm trying to
And
think if there was any other reason to do the thing, because initially those instances, I mean, the same thing that you said was what Rodrigo said during a design meeting on share migration, saying, we don't really need share instances. But I wonder why we arrived on that sort of a model. It's not
probably
something. Mhm.
because the host migration needs a source and destination created or not.
It does, but does it need that information stored in the database?
Okay.
It was, I mean, one aspect was to allow the transparency, which is you could go as an administrator, look at these shared instances and see what's going on with them. Like for instance, if you were trying to do replication or even migration, I mean, you'd see the individual export paths from the source and the destination. I suppose in migration, we decided never to expose an export location for a destination share until the migration is complete. But
Yeah.
that's not true of replication. We actually go ahead and expose it the moment the replica is set up. Um, if
Yeah.
in case it is readable and or writable.
Yeah.
So there was some thread of consistency that we were trying to build with these share instances, but I don't remember if that was the only motivation to do that. Uh, it would be we might have to reconsult those things, but I mean, back at that time, I was under the view that, yeah, share migration also, it doesn't make sense to really have two different instances represented in the database, because we would be able to indicate errors um, when they happen.
Or even survive when something is rebooted, something like that.
Yeah, when you bring down your entire, yeah, actually, that's a good point. That is a good point. So if your service plane is down, how do you know what the migration is acting against?
Yeah.
If I mean, you did want to separate out and tell the task states between the different instances, I think that was one of the motivations. But in your case, in server migration, you're not updating the task state of any shares or snapshots, right?
Yeah. Correct. I'm just updating the share server task states.
And there's
And
no progress fields, nothing is being updated.
no.
Okay. And are drivers getting this information in the driver migration continue interface as well?
For migration continue, yeah, we have the source, share server, destination, shares, and snapshots. So we are
Okay, so
providing
it's
the
a
same.
similar thing, except in case of get progress, you're not getting.
Yeah, the only thing is only the get progress that we are not providing, but I don't believe there is a specific reason for that. We can provide also.
Yeah, I think you should. I mean, just to leave it open to share drivers to do exact. I mean, the way they would like to implement it. I suppose tomorrow, if you guys decide you're not going to use SVMDR for this, and you would like to implement everything with per share snap mirror, for instance, or any driver that wants to operate at the per share level, I think they'd still want to see that in every driver interface. But I'm starting to see that there's probably no reason to do the instances bit. I mean, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
I'm still thinking hard as to if there was any strong reason we preferred that kind of consistency. And maybe that's something we can check with Rodrigo or from previous design discussions, if we can uh, add him to the review or something. Uh,
Yeah,
you can
good
ping
idea.
him. Yeah, you can ping him on the channel. He is usually responsive. Or we can just add him to review. But I don't suppose he's looking at his review. emails that well.
Yeah, probably we can. Would be a good idea to ping and talk directly to him. I don't believe that he will review 5,000 line of codes.
Yeah.
It's a huge change, but for sure he very responsive.
Okay. Cool. So, I mean, for me, I think right now I have no objection to not dealing with instances. But thanks for the clarification. That is something I would have looked for in the code myself.
Okay, so in order to do that, we are in migration complete. We are requesting some updates from the drivers. So we are requesting share updates and snapshot updates. And from this time, we are expecting a list of share updates and a list of snapshot updates. And as the same as share server, basically we are asking the new export locations in order to update the export locations in the share instance. And we have a pool name field here. So we are migrating a search share server to a destination share server that can can land in a backend that has more than one pool, and we are not sure where this share is going to be placed. So this is something that the driver should handle, and we are expecting at this moment, after completing the migration, that the driver will answer us which pool the the share landed. So the idea here is just to update in the share host with the correct backend and pool. So for each share, we are expecting these informations, and for each snapshot, update is on the provider location, also on the export locations. And basically is that you have a copy aqui of the same information. So the provider location, export location, and we have an extra parameter here, something that we added to the manager logic. So the driver might want to not to delete everything in the source, but they might want to let the share server, the search share server in the backend, and and by doing this, they need to answer that they want to manage the search share server and not to delete it. So uh, the default for this result is to be false. So the driver might not need to answer if he wants to manage the source. By not doing this, by not answering this information, what will happen is that at the end of the migration, the source share server will become active again. But at this moment, this share server will be empty and can be reused for another shares or can be deleted later. But by selecting manage the source, drivers might want to not delete the copy that is still in the source and manage this and let to the admins to hold this cleanup later. So this is an option that we added to the complete, and our driver is implementing this functionality. So they at the end, for our driver, the admin can choose using a config option if wants that the driver deletes everything in the source and let the searcher server it is, or if he wants that we remain everything in the source and just manage, and later he can handle this deletion or cleanup. So it's at the end
How
is
does
the
that help though? Is that something that was a request from this thing? What is the use case there?
it's not actually a request, but then something is that was discussed with other NetApp folks on avoiding a way of deleting everything in the source, because we might not be able to check everything in the destination if everything in destination is okay. So something that the admin wants to hold and check if everything went well on the migration, and then do later the deletion. But
But how would they delete it later?
after manually, because he already we are managing the share server, so something that
That's true, but since these were created by Manila, the administrator would then have to have access to the storage system, to go query the storage system to see what all resources are left behind by the migration, and they'd have to do some manual cleanup for it. That sounds quite weird to me, because at the same, I mean, we've done the migration via Manila, but we're not allowing Manila to. We're just allowing it to unmanage and forget about the resources. In a cloud context, that means a few things, right? One, you still are holding on to the network allocations from a given tenant, uh, and the share server is still exporting shares on for that tenant. So in case somebody has the source mounted, they still have access to that share. And two, a single, I mean, the tenant that's given you um, these network allocations might actually want them back. How would they take action on that? It feels like that's something that now that administrator suddenly controls, right? Because the tenant cannot see them. Uh, there's nothing to indicate that that particular uh, network is being used by a ghost share server somewhere.
yeah
It's like saying I'm going to unmanage this whole share server with a bunch of shares in it. It's going to consume space for me. It's going to consume my network resources, but I can't do much about it.
yeah so regarding the network part, this is something that we can handle the driver. uh, at this moment, if the migration has successfully made it and finished, we already stopped the communication from the source in order to enable the destination. So uh, users are not able to mount the source anymore. And something
Okay.
that we can do is to remove the network allocation. Uh, at this moment, what we are only preventing is to delete everything from the source, if the driver can do this kind of operation. Uh, might
So
be
wouldn't it be better if we allowed this to come in from the API rather than from the configuration?
it's a
A way of
possibility.
saying, hey, Manila, migrate my share server, but I don't want to delete the source. Because I mean, I'm going to delete the source outside of Manila. I just want you to unmanage the source. And by unmanage, I mean, yeah, there is going to be two aspects to that. One is remove the data path connectivity,
Yeah,
which is going to be on the project networks, and two, delete the shares, right? Or not delete the shares, keep the shares, keep the data alone, so that I have some sort of a retention period. Maybe this is some sort of you know it's some sort of government business where or there is some compliance requirement. I need to keep data around. I can't delete it for X number of days. Or maybe I do want to, like you said, because there's no way of checking whether everything made it to the destination.
Yeah.
I want to be able to say, okay, I'll keep this around and then check at a later time and then manually delete this stuff myself. So it doesn't feel like something that we can provide consistently if we're not controlling it entirely. You get what I'm saying? Add it as an API option, if you will, where you can say migrate this, but don't delete the source, and don't and just remove the data connections or something like that. As opposed, I mean, that way you can tell all drivers in a consistent way that
Yeah.
you want this to be done. And maybe it is something that drivers can claim, saying, yeah, I can do it, I can do your migration this way, I can keep my source. And maybe there are some drivers that migration is something that can't preserve the source at all, right? Just like how you can't cancel an ongoing migration, you cannot preserve the source. Once it's migrated, it's gone. Like, so there's no way I can keep this the source, and the drivers might be able to tell us that. I think that's how you're doing container driver migration, for instance. I mean, I don't think you can preserve data copies into two different places with container. You're just attaching the same volume to a new container, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So in that
Exactly.
case, it would be one of those things where the driver says, no, I can't preserve the source data isolated.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I mean, because I see this is a special case sauce that, some drivers might be able to do. Secondly, it also creates this, I don't know. I mean, from the perspective of creating an API that's common to all storage backends, this is like a special Snowflake configuration.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think that we can discuss this internally to see
Mhm.
if we plan to continue with this approach, this option, or if we abandon. But if we continue, yeah, the best will be to provide this on migration start, these options.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, makes sense.
And if you do that on migration start, you might also want to make sure that it is added to the check compatibility.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. And I mean it might be scary, but I suppose we shouldn't build for this sort of a situation, honestly, because here's a deal. Like, I mean, this is very similar to somebody saying, I want volumes to never be deleted. The user can come in and say, I mean, Manila, delete this, but Manila should never delete it. It should just tell the user, yeah, it's deleted. We should just
Yeah,
leave it alone, and for an administrator to come back and clean it up. But that kind of doesn't make sense, right? Like, if it does, we ought to build it consistently across everything, rather than allow for you to set it in the NetApp backend section and the EMC backend section, etc., as a configuration option. So that would be my feedback on that. I don't think it's a deal breaker for you guys, but if you're going to improve the API to do this, then it's going to be time critical.
yeah, yeah, for sure. We are running out of time for this release, and
Yeah.
we might not have too much time to discuss, and then later decide if we will keep these or not,
Mm-hmm.
and provide new APIs and so on, providing more tests and unit tests and so on.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, we can discuss this, and I can provide a feedback in the change itself, so to decide what we are going to do with that.
Yeah.
If you're going to keep or if you're going to improve the API to support selecting these and not being only backend configuration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's test that.
Okay, so that's it that we have from migration complete. And the last one is we build a new interface to choose share server compatible for migration. And drivers may, if they support it, they can reuse share servers that are already created in the destination. Which will not be a problem if something goes wrong, since the destination share will if something fails in the first phase, the share server will be moved to active again. But if something goes wrong in the complete step in the second phase, the share server will be set to error. So it might block other operations in that share server if the driver decide to reuse
Yeah.
the destination share server. But it's an option that we are providing here.
But why? What situation do you think that the drivers might want to continue to use an existing share server?
I can think of a reason for that. I can't think. I think that's always better to create a new one.
Yeah,
This
I
was the
agree with you, and that's and for this exact reasons that you said, which is if the destination share server is used for any reason, then you can't control it. Like in the sense when you cancel stuff, how do you roll back? What do? You can't delete that share server. I mean, what if there is a partial data copy that had happened and stuff?
yeah
So
yeah
it
with
is. Mhm.
uh, the destination driver. The driver, you need to handle this in the cancel process. You need to check the shares that were copied to the destination and deleted, something like that. So
Yeah,
it might something
and
else.
that's going to be complicated logic for a driver that will support this, right?
Yeah.
But are you guys implementing this like this in the NetApp driver or the container driver?
No. Mm, don't believe so. Neither dummy driver is doing that at this moment.
Okay, so
So
it feels like that's something you can go ahead and remove. And if in case there is a driver that badly wants this, or we need this, we should probably add it at a later time because it's an internal detail whether we want to reuse an existing share server or create a new share server anyway.
yeah, I can believe that we can do that. Yep, the idea here was just to try to do the same process that we do for uh, create shares in share servers. When we are creating shares in share groups, we always check if a share server can be used. So I was trying to doing the same stuff to
Agreed.
be
Yeah.
similar, but at this moment, nobody is implementing these and changing the default that is none.
Yep. So let's go ahead and remove it and add it only when maybe a future driver will want this for some reason. I don't see why, but maybe we'll come across a situation where it's required.
Makes sense. Okay. Okay, let's move to the share manager and go through these implementations. This is actually the workflow for migrating the share server. So the first one's the share server migration. That's not this one. It's this one. So this is the call, and uh, following that workflow and the uh, task state machine. So we are moving the share server to. At this moment, we only have the source, so we are moving to migration in progress. And we are calling here interface that is migration using the driver. That is the one that I was showing before. So migration starting the driver. Something that we are always doing is to get all the instance, all share snapshot instance to provide to the driver later. We are also providing share network information and let me see here. And we are updating status of all resource to server migrating. So we have a separate function here that we can take a look later that we can use to update all resource, so share instance and snapshot instance with a specific status. So all instance are going to be updated to share server migrating. Something that we were thinking before on doing on the API itself. So after fixing this, we can think about removing this from share manager and moving to the API. So updating everything. This is the part that we are building the share request spec. So we are talking about this in the API part that we build a request spec for the share server that contains every request spec for a share and its size and so on. So we built this thing here. And different from share migration, I remember that share migration first creates a share server at the destination, and then he calls the driver to check the compatibility. Here we are first calling the driver to check the compatibility, so we are not providing a destination share server because it does not exist yet. We are providing host information, share network, and so on, and the request spec. So we have a driver call to check the compatibility, and we are expecting a result here. And finally, we use this result to check if it's compatible or not. Moving to this function to validate the compatibility. This is something that is very similar to share migration. So at this point, we are getting the driver response, if it's compatible or not, and checking against the request provided by the user. So if the driver does not support, for an example, non-disruptive, and the request has a non-disruptive set to true, we are raising the exception. So in the beginning of the meeting, we tested the migration check with the non-disruptive set to true, and the dummy answered as a false. And this is the part that the exception was raised that because this mismatch. And we have the same validations for writable and preserved snapshots. What else? Also, when preserving snapshots, we are checking if the status of the snapshots are okay, and or if we have a snapshot instance and the driver does not support preserve snapshots. So for this thing to happen, the user will need to solve this issue by deleting the snapshots or selecting a different destination. So this is the part that we are also going to move these checks to the API, so we can fail earlier and already upload the status. So this is the end of the check compatibility. So one thing that is important to know is that the driver must answer compatible false if he did a check and doesn't match with the destination, like the free space or any other capability. So This is the part that the driver should answer as not compatible, and we fail because of any other reason that the driver finds when doing the check. So we were here by validating the check capability, and if everything's is okay here, so since we are inside this huge try here, we start creating the share server in the destination. This one is also a new function that we created. It's called provide the share server for migration. This function has a lot of different parameters that we have in provide share server for share, for example. So we decide to create a new one, and this one is responsible for what we are saying about trying to reuse a share server. And at the end, if there is no compatible share server, we are creating a new one in the destination. So this is something that we are going to change in order to remove this call, right? So we are doing here something that we can remove, and we can trigger right away a share server create. So we might cut a lot of part of the code in this function. Another thing that we're doing here, it's important to note that we do not create a new setup server interface. We are reusing the same one that we have for creating share servers for shares. So this is an interface that we were able to reuse. So the only thing that we are providing here at this moment is a metadata that help us, the driver, to set up a share server, considering that he is a destination of a migration. If at the end it has any different from a general share server. So the driver call is the same. The only thing that we are providing is a new metadata. And at the end, we are returning the compatible share server. So the steps here are very similar to the create share server for share. So we move our share server to creating, and then we wait to be active. Moving back to our workflow. On migration start. So we created a new share server here, and now we start to update the status of these destinations. Since it's a new share server, we are updating his status, and we are setting the search share server ID here. So this destination share server starts to point to the source, and if the driver does not support to be writable, we are starting to update the access rules to read only. Let me move. I will skip this. I can go to this function later, but the idea here is to cast all access rules from all shares to read only if the driver does not support to be writable. So what you were doing for a single share in the share migration, we are doing for a list of shares here. So we have been implementing and changing some of the functions to update these access rules. And after doing that, we going to actually call the driver. Before calling the driver, we updated the text states for both your driver starting, and at the end, we move to driver in progress. If anything happens between those steps, we are treating the rollbacks here. So we are updating the status to available again. So all share instance, all snapshots are going to be available again. If any access rules were changed, we are resetting the access rules to the previous state. And if we reach the state that we created a new destination share server, we are going to update to active and migration error and resetting the search share server ID. So at the end, we are not deleting. After creating a destination share server, we are never deleting the destination. We are just resetting this to an active, so it might be used again by the driver. At least from the NetApp point of view, we are never reusing these share servers that were a destination at some moment. So
you want to set that to inactive, right?
Sorry?
And not active.
It's a possibility to set to inactive. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We are actually setting to active because depending on the driver, they can reuse this one, but was inactive in the past for us. But if we think that at some point we were reusing destination share servers, this might be active. But if now we are thinking that destination share server will always be new share servers, we for sure can set this back to inactive again.
Let's set it to inactive or to error, because we don't really know what's going on with that share server. Whether it was maybe it wasn't even created properly, right? You have the destination share server. It was, I mean, is that something that'll that'll not be set if it was not created properly as well? Or you're expecting that it'll only be set if it has been created properly, but something went wrong with the migration start?
This is probably happening because something went wrong on the migration start.
Migration start. Okay, cool. Yeah, but even either case, I think you'll want to set that to inactive and just make sure it's something that the administrator cleans up. So you should even probably set a log message over there saying the administrator must be cleaning this up. And you should leave the source share server ID correct in that case, so that in case there is something that the administrator has to intervene and to clean up, they'll be able to do that without starting another migration. That way you will prevent it on the API to start the migration.
Yeah, we have this check.
Yeah.
So it was inactive on the first time that we were implementing this. But at the time that we were thinking of reusing destinations, we saw that the best was to set to active and to leave there. But if we consider that we are always creating a new one, I believe that there is no problem to set to inactive or error. And we can continue with the search server, and the admin will be he will need to clean this up before creating a new migration, starting a new migration. Yes.
Yeah, I suppose the reasoning there is that you can't tell what went wrong.
Yeah.
And this will need a look anyway. It's not something that's expected. We're not expecting that this will fail, because the migration validation check and all of that has worked fine.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my suggestion, and we can even document this, that before a migration is reattempted, you have to clean up the previous migrations. That'll force them to take a look at the back end, or for the share manager.
Okay, so even so, if we have some anything left on this share server, I believe that still it's up to the driver try to handle any issue that he found on the migration start, like we are doing in the NetApp driver.
Yeah.
So if something goes wrong, we do the cleanup in the destination, and we only the share server remains in order to be deleted later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if we set this to inactive or error, the share manager will try to delete this one, and it might have some shares that need to be deleted inside.
So no, that's still a good idea. You should still clarify the share driver interface that you expect on errors that the rollback and cleanup is done by the the share driver itself. But the reference in Manila will still remain in case there is something that the share driver cannot take care of. Like think of instances where a migration has started. Actually, no, the share manager service dies in the middle of uh, a setup or something where the migration has not yet started, but there is a share server that's been created and stuff like that. Those are error cases where you'll want to handle this
Yeah.
by external intervention. Because I suppose if you have any volumes on a share server, many storage systems won't let you delete that share server. It's just to check that they would have enforced. So stuff like that, since we have no reference to the volumes ourselves, we wouldn't be able to delete it from Manila.
Yeah, something that only the enemy will need to handle by manually deleting, and by having the share server identification, we can actually still list the share server and see that it's an error or inactive, and take some actions on it.
Exactly, and by setting your source share server ID, you're making sure that they will take that step as opposed to just letting it stay there.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have these rollbacks in the other functions. Well, we understand that we need to change in on every operation that has rollbacks, and I think that we agree with this. Awesome.
Okay. Cool. So you've done with check and start. I think that's the bulk of the stuff. I think complete seems straightforward to me. We probably don't need to delve into too much detail with complete, but I'm interested in the continue. But of course,
you can. We can take a look on continue then.
Yeah, sure.
So we decided to create a new periodic task here, beside having a periodic for share migration doing the same thing. But I believe that, I don't know what you think, but we have different update interval for these two, since we are expecting to have to take more time to migrate a share server than a share, because it's expected that the share server will have more shares than a single one. And we create a new one, beside knowing that we don't want to have too many periodic tasks. So at this moment, we are open for feedbacks on that. Should we consider a single driver continue periodic task, or should we continue with two? Yeah, this is something that is it's open yet, or something that we can do improvement in the future.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a hard question to answer because you're introducing a new configuration option. And while we're discussing active services, this thing has come up again and again, and we have continued to add more and more periodic tasks. um, and these are happening on the share manager, whether or not the service is running in an active fashion. So it's kind of, it's no worse than the existing situation, and no better even, because we're relying on the same mechanism. But I kind of agree, it's probably too soon to ask if it is, you know, I think the driver interval for share migration is 15 minutes, isn't it?
Uh, for driver for share migration,
I think it's
Yeah.
less than that. I would say.
Oh.
the default's 1 minute.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Initially, we set, I think, if I recall correctly, we set twice as fast as the share migration. So it would be like 120 seconds, which means 2 minutes. And I mean,
Oh boy.
It's
I don't
just
know
a,
if
Yeah,
it's fair. Yeah.
just a value.
that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why the migration driver continue update interval was 60. But I suppose this is something that you could set to even a higher value like 15. It would it make sense to actually have it at 2 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, in the CI, of course, you're going to override that and set it to like even 10 seconds or something like that. But in real life, do we expect that this is? I mean, it might be a lot of thrashing, because here's what happens on a host where we're running periodic hooks. The default hook that we really need is the scheduler hook to do capabilities update, and that runs in once in 60 seconds. And you start overriding that hook, you start pushing these updates lower and lower. So it may not, you might be interfering with other hooks that are running if you start overloading that hook thread. You get what I mean? So if I
Yep.
mean, we've observed this with replication, for instance. So by default, I think replication, the update interval is once in 15 minutes. I could be wrong again over there, and that's something I can check. Yeah, it is. Oh wait,
Yeah.
actually, it's once in 5 minutes. So we at least said, okay, we'll take the hit once in 5 minutes, as opposed to doing it every 60 seconds, because a check that happens every 60 seconds will interfere with the driver's capabilities update.
Yep.
For sure. So that's something for you to think about. And I don't think anyone would need to complain if this becomes 15 minutes. And the worst case is, the driver returns saying, okay, migration is not complete, but the driver actually just finishes it the second after, and you have to wait an entire 15 minutes before
Yeah.
you say complete. So it's not the end of the world, I think. And by defaulting to that, we'll just allow people. I mean, if somebody is bothered by that, setting it to 2 minutes is not the worst thing.
Yeah. Okay. I have no objection with that. Is an option that can be configured by anyone also. So for us, it's just on a value that we usually uh, configure with another value, a low value,
Yeah,
when
in the
doing
CI.
tests in the CI and or when doing tests in our dev environment.
Yeah.
We don't usually know uh, which value will be good for cloud administrators.
Yeah. I'd
But
suggest putting it to at least 15 minutes.
okay.
And if somebody is impatient about that, even after starting a migration, all you have to do is just restart the driver, change the value and restart the driver, right? Because we are not going to disturb anything that's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're interested on continue. What we are doing on continue, we are also expecting uh, to do this on the destination.
Mhm.
So what we are actually looking is for share servers that match the host and have this the status set to migration to. So we are now we are triggering the same operation, migration continue to the driver in the destination. So after retrieving all the share servers that match host and migration to, well, we have a loop here that the first thing is just to find the searcher server and see if it's available, and after that, and we start gathering all the share instance and snapshot instance, and then trigger the migration continue on the driver. Uh, there is nothing too much new here. We are expecting a finish equal to true when the driver actually finish the first phase, copying all the data, and we are updating the task states if the driver finish the data copy. So well, update is on finish is only to set the task state to phase one done. And the same way for that we have on share migration, we can also expect that if it's not finished, we should check if it wasn't canceled at some point. So the same thing is just to raise a warning and not to do anything else regarding this. Um, and deceptions, treating the errors and so on. We are moving everything to available regarding the resource for this share server, reset read-only access rules. And what we will going to change here is the update of the destination share server, that here we are again updating to active and setting to none. So this will be changed, but the source share server will indeed have the status updated to active. So they will have different updates here. This this is what we have for the continue. So, and this new thread, and something that we can take a look is the complete migration complete. Also have beside checking all the states and updating the migration to a task called the completing. We will get, after calling the driver for migration complete, we get this return that is a model update that we expect to have share updates where we are going to update all export location. And what's important to see is that for every instance, we are updating the status, a new availability zone, the new share network if it was changed. We are providing the new host, and we are also updating the share server ID. So this is the point that we updated all the instance with this new information. And if the driver provides the pool name, we are also providing, we are also appending to the host itself. So this is the part that I believe that's important to see. So here that we are
And
fixing all
you're
the.
not allowing any status updates?
Uh,
Are you?
didn't get your question.
Okay, so yeah, so you're setting the status to available. So I'm wondering if there is a way. I mean, you will need to update status updates. I mean, if a driver wants to say, okay, I'm able to take all of these shares except these two. Is that something that they can update via status?
No, this is not something that we are thinking, or something that we are planning, because the idea was uh, the idea of the driver interface was to ask driver to migrate the entire share server to a destination,
Yeah.
and consider that all shares and snapshots that we are providing through the driver call, they will be also in the destination. So I believe that
Okay.
if they can migrate two shares, for an example, or any other configuration, she should deny in the beginning. So
Okay.
an example will be, at this moment on NetApp driver, we are not allowing migration in the same backend. So we are denying, we are not letting the if the user provide a new share network, we are not letting to be different security service. So we are supporting at this moment to copy everything that is related to security service to the destination, and not changing. So the only thing that we are allowing is to change the network itself.
Yeah.
It's something that we are doing in the check.
No, I
So
was wondering more in terms of the individual shares themselves. Like, let's say if you had a driver that was looking at taking this at a share level rather than the share server level, like the NetApp driver is currently doing. Like, for example, the container driver, right? It realizes that, let's say, I wasn't able to attach this new volume, this old volume to the new share server, but I realized this at the cutover phase, which is the migration complete phase. I can't predict that during the check compatibility phase. So how would
yeah.
I indicate this? Should I claim that the entire migration was unsuccessful, or should I go ahead and return statuses for each individual share and say, this one's here is an error and I need help.
Hmm.
And it could even be for some arcane issues, like I think I mean, it used to be a thing with host resisted migration that we could not copy files. And if a driver implements something that is a traditional DD, and you don't have permission to touch a particular file, it's been locked for some reason, and even the root user cannot modify it or something like that. I mean, it's a silly error, but it's not something that you can tell in advance. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
There might be a class of problems where that might happen, but you're saying that
Yeah.
so far you don't anticipate that. Um,
Yeah. And
you're
we are not
testing and
allowing
matching.
that. Yeah. From my point of view, if the admin choose to migrate to the entire share server, and at the end he gets a destination share server, but a few shares are in error, I believe that not something that he wants, and probably he's receiving something that different from that he requested in the beginning. So I
Yeah,
believe that in this case we should ask the driver to fail, uh,
yeah,
even if everything goes to error. Uh, at the end, everything will go to error, but at least the success will mean that every share and snapshot was migrated with success to the destination, and not a subset of shares were migrated. So
agreed. Yeah,
yeah, so
no, that makes sense.
I understand your point. I believe that a lot of issues can happen, for sure. From our point of view, if something goes wrong in this part, and we are going to abort everything. So from the driver side, it's everything or nothing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's treat it that way until, let's say, if somebody does have an issue, then they'll let us know in the future.
Okay,
At this point, we don't have this.
and we can also provide notes here
Yeah.
to explain that.
Makes sense.
And continue. The next part is to grab the snapshot updates. So if during the migration there are updates regarding the snapshots, driver can provide. So from dummy, for an example, he provides a snapshot export location, new snapshot export locations that can be updated, and also the provider location. From a NetApp perspective, I don't believe that we are providing any info that needs to be changed, since the name of the provider location doesn't change. And so this is the part that we update everything in related snapshot, and same thing, we are moving everything to available, where we also can add some notes here.
So what happens when you don't have the capability to take snapshots to the destination, and the administrator has said, okay, I don't care about snapshots? Where do we take care of that?
When we don't have snapshots, or if we have snapshots on any share, we are going to raise an exception. But if we do not have any snapshot, the only thing that is happening is that the driver is not providing any update information. And
no, I meant like we are going to leave the snapshots in the Manila database, right?
So no, if the driver does not support, and we have snapshots in the shares, we are raising a exception at the beginning of the process. We are not allowing leaving the snapshot behind and deleting them later. We are raising an exception, so the admin must delete all snapshots before actually requesting the migration.
That makes sense.
Something that the admin must understand, that he needs to delete all that snapshots before migrating. It's better that we do this in the code itself.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. That's good.
So this is the end of your updates, and the last steps are to reset the access rules and to update the share server. And this is the part that we do, that the manager's treatment, and we might be revisiting this soon. I believe that this is the end of the complete. So this is the complete, and this is called, let me find, it's called here. So we also have a try here in order to catch any exception raised in that process. And now here we have we resetting all the status to error. So all resources are being sent to error. Search share server is being set to error, and destination share server also being set to error. But I believe that this is not should be done. We still need to point to the source, so the admin can find out which destination share server is this one, related with which source. And this is the end of the migration. And this is the exception, and this is the success. If everything went okay, we are moving to active. Task states being set to success, and now we are cleaning the source share server ID. I don't believe that at this moment we still need to hold that info, or we can hold. Sure. And updating all resources to available again. So this is being updated 2 times. Not sure if we need to set everything again, or we can skip. I'm lost here. So we are setting 2 times to available. We may skip it here and doing all the updates at the end. It might be better. So at the end, when we finish everything regarding the migration, we set everything to available again. What do you guys think?
Code improvement, but that's up. I leave that up to you, or note that in the code review.
I prefer to do everything in the end, since we already update the share server status and then we update the resource status and not have. I will sit here and think about it. Okay, so migration cancel. There is no. I believe there's no news regarding this one. It's very similar to other operations. We change the status, we call the driver, and we update it depending on the results. Yes, there's one thing. We added a new task state before calling the driver. So this is a new task state that we are saying that we have a cancel in progress. So while starting canceling the share server, we do not have a continue periodic checking the same migration. So what can happen is that we are destroying some relationships here, and they continue checks and see that it has an invalid state and send the share server to another state. And what we actually want is to set to cancel at the end. And that's it. Get progress, no news. I don't believe that we need to take a look. And I would just take a look if we miss something important here. We already talked about this one. Something that we need to pay attention when reviewing, that we are changing how this was implemented. So we have this guest rules to read only implemented together with share migration, and we have now a guest access rules for server. That we are basically doing the same thing, but we should consider that we are calling this at the destination, and we want to send this RPC to the source. So source, we will update all the access for a number of instances. And this is something that we have been changing, and we tested with drivers. We changed the dummy to validate this, and it seems to be working fine. Also, with these changes, we didn't see any issues in the CI regarding access rules test and so on. And this is also the same thing related to the change on the access rules updates. And the other are small details. Same thing for updating access. For instance, we have a new function to update a lot of access rules for a list of instances, not for a single one. And that's it for Share Manager, I believe. And I think that's it. Have we been changing this migration class that was built only for share migration? Have been using functions that we have here for both share migration, share servers. So there were some minor changes here, and we need some eyes here too. But at this point, don't seems to be having any issues with that. In order to test this this reset access rules, I was changing the dummy driver to return writable false. So by returning writable false, I can go through all this this flow and updating all the access rules and see if it was working.
You do have the same thing with the container driver, right?
I'm not sure if the container driver is set writable is true. I believe that is true because the container driver can remain writable in the first phase because he's doing nothing, and he only do the action in the complete phase where he just move the he mount at the source and mount at the destination. So he can remain writable.
That makes sense. So with these changes, is the container driver now running share migration tests as well as share server migration tests that you folks are adding?
Yes. We actually, I don't remember which is the status of the share migration for container driver. I believe that it was passing, and I'm not sure why the OVM was failing here. We will check later. But we have share migration. Let me remove this from the front. Okay, migration. So we have some tests passing for test migration. So we have for CIFS. Yeah, we implemented, I believe that the implementation is then the same patch. I don't remember correctly.
I can barely hear you, Felipe.
Yeah, if you have a problem with your microphone.
Yeah, your mic sounds like
But
I don't know how to explain.
as we can see, we have both share and share migration in the same patch. Not sure if this is a problem. We believe that it's interesting to have both merged. If and something happens with the migration of share server, we also can hold the share migration for container. I don't believe that will be a problem.
No, makes sense. No, I was just checking because I was curious when these patches came in. So that's cool. So I can take a look at that.
And what we have the client implementation that is also made by Felipe and Daniel. We have the container driver, the dummy driver, and the Tempest changes that Andre is fixing some comments. And we need to see if everything is working. I believe that should be working for dummy and container. I believe that the name is servers migration. So you have test share servers migration. And for the dummy, we have it's passing on both CIFS and NFS. This is for dummy. So dummy is testing this one. And let's see if container is okay also. Test servers. Servers migration. Yeah, he's passing also. Just need to trigger the NetApp driver again.
Awesome.
So we still have some work to do regarding these things that we are discussing. But I believe if you guys have some feedback to provide us, we can have more time to fix these issues.
Yep.
get
No,
this.
definitely. I'll definitely take a look at this, at least complete my first pass by EOD today or by
Right.
tomorrow. So I have these things, whatever came in through the review is either in the Etherpad or already added as comments to the patch. And we should ask folks to take a look at it as soon as possible. You're running the meeting this week, so you can bring it up during the meeting and
Yeah.
have folks sign up, because I don't see people's names added against the patches. And you can have them sign up for individual things. Definitely, I mean, different people can be looking at the Tempest changes and the client changes and stuff like that, because we certainly have domain expertise and stuff.
Yeah. Sure. There's a lot of code to be reviewed.
Yeah. So yeah, we can spread people out and things. But if there is something that you're specifically looking for feedback, um, let me know, and I can alert folks.
Okay.
Great. What are we on? Like 3 hours?
Something like
Kind of.
almost 4 hours.
Oh wow, 4. Oh, wait, no, wait. This was particularly helpful to me to go through each one of these, which is really cool. And since we'll be posting the recording on the channel, it's probably going to be helpful to the other reviewers as well that are not on this call.
Yeah.
Or anybody that wants to come back and see how this was designed or how this is meant to be used before we write some documentation. Um, so thanks, Douglas, for all the hard work, and thanks all of you for all the hard work. And we should probably take the rest of it online via IRC and
Yeah.
reviews.
Yeah.
You want to kill the recording? I
Yeah.
have a few questions, I think.
Okay. Thank you for being here and following all the code and everything that we have been working. So anything that you guys need regarding questions about the code, that we can ask for me or Carlos, Felipe, or Andre in the IRC, and we can answer as soon as possible. And that's what we have for this feature. Okay. That's it. So let's end for today, and I've stopped the recording.
All right.
Thank you everybody for joining, and we will meet at the IRC, and that's it.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.